Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government, and I wanted to do a video today on the assassination of Dr. Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. If I'm probably pronouncing that very badly, and I apologize. I'm very sorry to hear of his assassination, and I feel the same way that I felt when I heard about the assassination of Soleimani. There's no need for that kind of power game to be played because all it does is accelerate the problems, and there's always a backlash to the games. The power games of one-upmanship are based on a sense of lack of power. This has been considered this event has been considered an act of terrorism, and possibly by Israel. And I'm going to today address how to solve this problem and tell you how our Creator has offered a solution to this problem. Okay, terrorism comes from it's a power game, the power game of anger that's associated with terrorism, and it comes when people feel that they have no voice. People on the bottom feel they have no voice, so they raise their voice to be heard, oftentimes to the point of violence. So the solution to it is to just open a dialogue, and when in the past, and to actually regard what everybody says. In a way, basically the principle that brings terrorism to an end is tolerance, and tolerance is the idea of everybody working together with a common idea. Okay, when there's a crisis situation, when there's conflict, there is the principle that ends conflict is like a war, is equality. If you consider like a dispute in court to be like a mini war, for there to be a fair trial where there is no objection to it, no kangaroo court idea, there has to be equality under the law. So tolerance is something that precedes that, and that is something where everybody is working together. So let's consider this idea. If you have a war going on, a dispute going on, and there's equality under the law, that solves the problem. Okay, but what leads to that is intolerance, and this is acts of terrorism. Okay, so if you look at this idea, I'm going to go into the faith of the puree and how each of the world's 7 major religions addresses a power game, but also one of the principles that you need to understand, like this, on how to create the life you want. So we're looking at tolerance and everybody working together. And when people refuse to work together because of intolerance, let's say they're playing games of one-upmanship, then people protest. And then if, let's say they protest that something is unfair, which is what Muslims do, they stand and protest. That's the power game they play in terrorism when it goes to the extreme. They say, this is not fair, this is not right, what you're doing is not right. When they're denied a voice, then they resort to acts of terrorism. But on the opposite side of that is if the Christians are not listening, then that is what creates a swinging action in the Middle East. Is that when they're not listening, when the Christians come together and come up with a plan that benefits everyone, then everybody's working together on a common goal. If people stop listening and say, it's my way or you get out, or the highway, then that doesn't work. It's not fair. Or the games of one-upmanship don't work because of this. If you have a situation where where people are playing the games, then tolerance is the solution. And in the Middle East, there are many, many examples of everybody working together with a sense of creating equality, like the program that I heard about recently, where they're using the water from the Dead Sea and creating a sense of abundance of water because everybody needs water. When it's a matter of nuclear power, though, that is something that I'm going to address on how to solve this problem. So let's say we have Israel and Iran fighting over nuclear power. Iran has a reputation for being difficult to get along with. Let's say they lash out in anger, okay, in a way, and so Israel, which is not a Muslim country, is based on Judaism. Their religion is based on Judaism. The problem with that is that when Muslims and Christians are disputing each other, then when that creates a sense of the pendulum moving back and forth. But when Israel comes in and they consider themselves to be victims of the situation, then what it does is it pulls the pendulum off balance and it creates a sense of rotation. It goes around and brings everybody into the crisis. So this battle between Iran and Israel is creating a sense of victimization, a sense of a low energy that's creating a sense of crisis. This is one of the reasons why we are not, as an organization, and working with Israel right now. It's because we have to understand the power games. Mankind has to understand the power games and how they work and why they don't work. The first idea is the first proposal is Iraq, because that was an act of revenge, and that brings together 5 power games. So let's say it created a genocide, a character defamation campaign that drew in everybody on the planet in some way. Now, going back to Iran is the kind of nation that is focused on 2 main ideas. One is spirituality and their religion, and the other one is technology. They understand the principles of technology. Technology is very important to them. Their idea of creating their life is based on technology. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at Iraq and Iran as being an idea about this. So, in other words, let's say the first government proposal is about Israel, but then it also brings in Iran. We're looking at the principles of revenge, how it works and why it doesn't work. But then we're looking at Iran and how it reacts to Israel. And we're saying, the power games of revenge, that like what happened against Iraq, backlashed on all the people. And I'm going to go into that in greater depth in our government proposal with that. We have a great deal of information about power, where true power comes from. Does it come from having a military, being able to, believing you can assassinate people from other countries and not have any backlashes associated with it? If this is something where Israel has the backing of Donald Trump and feels that they're going to do something now to work together and go against Iran and going to attack them and feel that they are going to destabilize the Middle East, that backlashes, that is an act of revenge that backlashes. So the Iraq War created a a situation that was because they were going after an innocent person. They destabilized the United States. George W. Bush collapsed the U.S. power base, and that's why the world leaders are jockeying for power right now. Okay, this is something that I'm just giving you kind of an overview idea. We go into this in such greater depth in all of our government proposals that don't worry about it. Just consider that when you crucify an innocent person, it collapses your power base. The games seem to work for a period of time, and then they collapse. When they play against an innocent person, they collapse the power base. And then what happens is you have to work to get out of your crisis. You have to work to undo the damage you've done. That's where the United States is right now with these first three government proposals. We invaded Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction. It collapsed our power base because we weren't standing on the principles of universal law, of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We collapsed, we took away the unalienable rights as Americans, we took away the unalienable rights of the Iraqi people to have a sovereign country. And now we have to assume responsibility and to start to come out of our crisis. We are seen as we are not standing on the principles of our democracy, of one nation, indivisible, because we're under God, with liberty and justice for all. It's not liberty and justice when you work together with another country to assassinate the leader of the Iranian nuclear program. And the reason I'm saying this, it will backlash on them if Donald Trump is involved with this, because of the JCPOA. When he pulled out of the JCPOA, right, what happened at that point in time was that Iran was willing to work together. Iran is innocent here. They were willing to work together, and now when he pulled out, Donald Trump collapsed his power base by attacking Iran, doing the same thing that George W. Bush did when he attacked Saddam Hussein. By Iran agreeing to the nuclear power program, the JCPOA, and in the background, the plan for world peace, they were willing to work for peace. They were willing to abide by using it for peaceful programs, leaving everything open to inspection by the UN inspectors. They were open to that idea. By U.S. pulling out, it collapsed Donald Trump's power base. Let's say that he could pull out of it, but he cannot attack Iran and accuse them of doing anything wrong. Okay, so now I'm going to step back and I'm going to look at this idea. Terrorism is not about somebody bad and somebody good, and the bad people are trying to harm the good people, which is what George Bush said it was. And that made a lot of people angry and felt they were being treated unfairly, because why would he be the person who had the right to judge them as being good or bad? He didn't have the right to do that. By doing that, he took away their rights. Okay. And now we have to, as Americans, we have to guarantee everybody on the planet their unalienable rights. That is now the principle of tolerance. When we are all working together to create a plan for world peace that stops all the power games, because they just don't work. There's always a backlash to the games. They compensate for lack of power. Now, let's consider what we can work on and to enable everybody to function on a higher level. Okay, the idea of Iran, I'm going to look at Iran and technology, and we're going to think about technology for a little while. Okay, technology, it spins off. That's the first segment that spins off from world peace. We're looking at we were before, just a few minutes ago, we were looking at Islam and Christianity kind of like going across like this. Okay, but now what we're looking at, we have a plan for world peace, and we're looking at the planning process and how it goes in a circle. Let's say you have a plan, you bring in your partner, you're going to build a restaurant or a business, you or house, you're going to build a house. You come up with an idea, I'm going to build a house, then you bring in your partners, the people who can help you do that. You find like those are like the realtors or the builder, a builder who does something. You see an ad in the paper for houses and you think, yes, I'm going to have this guy build a house for me. And then once you have these two things, then you can go on and you can get the funding for it. Then you start to think of the financial aspect, the support aspect of it, where you can get a loan with a good plan, a viable plan, and with a good builder, business partners to work with you to do it. The banks are more likely to work with you. They're likely to give you the money that you need. And then what you do is you do the building part of it and you deal with the glitches idea. The glitches are, you're always dealing with in a business, you're dealing with like what happens with the post office if you have an e-commerce business and the post office doesn't send your packages on time, can't track it, they can't figure out where it is. And then you deal with security issues. If you have a really good business and it's lucrative and you're doing well, what happens if your computers get hacked? You always have to deal with security issues. If you can't deal with security issues, then your plan doesn't go. And the same thing with your life. If you're working to create your life, if you can't deal with security issues, if you cannot resolve security issues, then you run into problems. And then that goes up to capacity. Then you can start to demonstrate your capacity, and then you deal with tolerance, and then you're successful. You deal with everybody working together and building a network of that allows everything to go forward. Okay. So when you're dealing with technology, you're dealing with this idea of a plan, new technology. You have a new computer, you have a design for free power source invention, which is what we have. And then you have, excuse me, then you have to deal with security issues. Is this going to be used as a weapon that can be only, or is it going to be used as a tool? This technology and this idea of security. You're always looking at the opposing side of the circle. But over world peace, we come up with a plan that also includes all the other principles. We're doing everything at the same time. And we're looking at this idea of tolerance and everybody working together. So I have a plan for world peace. I have a plan, it's an overview idea, a plan for world peace dealing with security issues that people don't understand it yet. So now, but the plan can only be used for peaceful purposes. This is where we are now, is we're looking at a spin-off idea about power, where power comes from, and where true power comes from, it comes from assuming responsibility. It comes from everybody working together and solving the problems. So now, if we have a cure, I introduced, let's say not a cure, but information to the medical communities and our governor in our state about where viruses come from. And they are working, they took the information and they have been able to flatline this idea. So now we have, by introducing this idea of where viruses come from, they've been able to work together with a sense of tolerance, sending out this information to enable everybody to solve this problem. Our plan in the future is that the international government will be able to solve these problems because everybody's working together, sharing research and sharing the resources that we have. So if there was a in like if in the future, if this virus had broken out in Wuhan, China, there would be an immediate response. China would notify the international government. They would go in, but they would also notify the international government, and that would kick in all the resources of the entire planet. They would have all the understanding. Right now, people like me don't have a voice. I don't have to lash out. I have my voice by putting information on the internet and on YouTube channels like this. I share it with people. I just keep sharing and sharing how to solve problems. And then the international government will, with an act of tolerance, the international government will bring everybody together, the experts, and they'll take these ideas and they'll go forward. Our people in the organization, our independent members of the organization, are actually the 200 people working together. And the man, I'm parallel to Iraq. I'm parallel to Saddam Hussein. I have been treated the same way that Saddam Hussein was treated. Okay. I understand where power comes from, where true power comes from. He wrote a book. I channel books too. I'm very religious, so is he. Okay, I'm spiritual. I believe in that all the religions, our Creator gave all the religions this information and opened it up to debate, just like I've been given this information because I asked for it. Okay, so Iran now spins off from this idea of world peace, and we're looking at where power comes from. It's this focus of power, but it creates a sense of duality. Is it going to be used for peaceful purposes or as a weapon? They have to deal with security issues. This is where the world is right now, is looking at Iran. How are they going to react to this idea? They have three choices. They've now had two of their very, very powerful people assassinated. Are they going to retaliate? Are they going to get, or are they going to, let's say, are they going to, they always have three choices. They can go down into the power games. They can ignore the crisis and pass it on to future generations. And the generations can't solve the problems. In the future, it takes 7 generations to undo the damage that's been done. Okay, or they can function on a higher level. They can actually work together to come up addressing the root cause of this problem. So now we're going to address the root cause of the problem. Okay, the root cause of the problem is nuclear power. Nuclear power is where true power comes from. Okay. Does it come from power games of one-upmanship? No. George W. Bush, when he invaded Iraq, and there were no weapons of mass destruction, it collapsed his power base. So, is Donald Trump collapsing his power base if he supports this idea of, is this his parting shot to demonstrate he has all this power and I'm going to destabilize things before he leaves, or he's not going to leave because he's going to try to start a war? So what we're doing right now is we're looking at what Iran can do to get out of this crisis. Joe Biden and Barack Obama worked to introduce this idea of the international government, and that led to the JCPOA. Okay, so by Biden going back into the JCPOA and supporting that and already announcing that, so now the United States has 3 choices. What are we going to do? Okay, Iran is being offered the opportunity to go back into the JCPOA. But how they respond to this, basically, they can go down into a war, retaliate. They can ignore the crisis and pass it on to future generations, and it takes 7 generations to undo the damage. If they don't consider the plan for world peace, then they're backed into the corner, and these are the only 2 options they have. Okay, so are they going to accept Biden's idea about going back into the JCPOA and say to Donald Trump, hey, we don't have to go that way. We are going to take you to court because what this is it's an act of aggression that goes against international law. Okay, so the plan for world peace is based on the idea of disputes between nations being resolved in court rather than the battlefield. And the monies wasted on war will go to the people instead. Now, I'm going to take one step further. Okay, so the whole issue is if Donald Trump takes them to court, if it goes out to the battle, it goes into the court issue, and they take Donald Trump to court as an act of aggression, they can say, look at the idea of the letter of the law rather than the intent of the law. It's saying, I had the constitutional right to do this, but he doesn't have the right to abuse his power. And the abuse of power is creates a sense of ripples like this, like the crises that go off. Intolerance leads to oppression, and oppression leads to loss of rights. And this is based on our light source invention, one of 3 inventions that we're introducing in the technology segment that addresses this idea about power, a free power source invention where 3 countries come together and they work together with a sense of tolerance to create this idea. The invention requires 3 countries to come together and work together. The United States, England, and Iran. So if one of them refuses to work together as a power game, well, we'll just stick with nuclear power, and we're just going to not work together with you because we don't like you, that kind of attitude. No, we're going to do it ourselves. It won't work. It won't work because what happens is, this is the interesting aspect of the technology that we're introducing, is the only way it will work is based on win-win agreements. This is an invention that's based on making win-win agreements. The United States, to be part of this, has to be willing to let go. Everybody has to be willing to let go of their power games and to do this, work together. Okay, now, the three inventions, Iran is working on the free power source invention. If they refuse to come in and they're just going to, lob missiles at Israel or whatever, just retaliate that way. By doing that, they can decide not to come. But what'll happen is another country that has the same idea will do it on another level, and then it's like having a temper tantrum, a child having a temper tantrum. No, I don't want to do that. No, you can't make me do it. Okay, we're not going to make you do it. But what we'll do is we'll just introduce it to somebody else, and then those people will do it on a different level, and then what it'll do is it will go back, and they'll be able to take it not from us, not as an idea, or because I'm an American, she's American, she's working with the United States, No, I work with all the countries. I'm a citizen of the universe first. My most important relationship with this is my Creator. And that's the way it is with everybody. We are all, before any national lines were drawn, before we were born, before we could have come from someplace else, and we'll go into that later, where we came from. But we are all citizens of the universe. We're all subject to God's law, our Creator's law of universal law. Every atom in the universe is subject to that. And we'll go into that, all of these things in far greater depth later. I just wanted to introduce this idea that there is a way out for let's say Joe Biden to do that, to say, just take Donald Trump to court. He's very good at going to court. And the idea is that I honestly don't think that when there is a plan for world peace, I'm not an expert on the law, even though my responsibility, one of my exempt purposes is to purify the legal system. I'm not an expert on the law. I'm introducing this overview idea of that, and then I turn it over to other people when we introduce that idea. So if he takes it to court, then it's going to be hard for him to defend himself because he pulled out of the JCPOA. Iran is able to deal with Israel, and when you look at Donald Trump, basically they can't win if they pulled out of the JCPOA, and he cannot, when a plan for world peace has been introduced based on everybody working together based on their talents and gifts and their natural resources, there is no way that you can wage war anymore. Wars are illegal. So we have to work together. When the pandemic affects everybody, then, and somebody has a way to understand how to solve this problem and is willing to share this information, then there are no problems anymore. The average people will stand up and protest and will say, we want world peace, and that's when we demand it. That's when our governments have to stand up and listen to it. Okay? Maybe when 25% of the people are protesting, there is not enough power there. But when half the population of the planet stands in protest, that enough is enough, we're not going to tolerate this anymore, that's when peace comes, when world peace comes. And that is something that starts my book that I did back in 1999 called I channeled a book with an entity by the name of Seth, and he starts this out. Half the population of the planet has prayed for peace, and peace can now come. The spiritual hierarchy can step in and give us the information on how to solve all these problems, including how to stop wars and how to come up with a free power source invention. They're more than willing to share with us as long as we're willing to work with them. When we stand up and say, no, I'm not going to do that, then it's really hard to get your attention. So they'll introduce it to somebody else, and you'll just lose your opportunity to function on a higher level. You'll back yourself into the corner so you only have two options, and both of them are untenable. Okay? So, I am very sorry to hear, I would like to, that of the assassination of Dr. Mohsen Fakhrizadeh and Soleimani too, and I send my condolences to their families. There's no need to assassinate anybody. There's no need for that to happen when world peace is here. So thank you for listening. Please share this with your family and friends. Open debate. Share this information with people. I'll keep explaining things over and over again. Subscribe so that we can continue to put on these videos, and like so that the idea goes out, and just come back and join the debate, because when you do that, it spreads the idea. The world is a very big place, and this is the best way to get the information out. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate that. Talk to you later.